Alrighty, well, welcome everyone. Thank you guys all so much for joining us today for our full circle with the Circle of Care session. We're really excited to have you guys here today to help us in celebrating the accomplishments and the success of the Circle of Care program. So, for those of you, anyone that may be new here and may not know who I am, my name is Ambrosia Branson and I am the project coordinator for the Circle of Care for this amazing project we're talking about. Basically, what I want us to do to get us started off is I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about what our lunch is going to look like, our lunch session together. If you're enjoying your lunch, I hope you guys are having some really good, nutritious food. But I'm going to tell you guys just a little bit about what this presentation is going to look like and what the Circle of Care is. I'm going to give you guys just a very brief overview for anyone that may be new here. Basically, what we're going to be talking about today is kind of how we got here and why we're here. We're going to talk about each of our program components that we've had with the Circle of Care. I'm so excited to show you guys the names and the faces kind of behind the scenes. I know I've spoken with so many of you guys across the state of Illinois and telling you guys about the program components, but I'm so excited. After that, we'll talk a little bit about our reach within the program, our impact, and then about a couple of new resources that we are about to launch with the Circle of Care at the end of June. Also, can everyone still hear me okay? I just had a thing flag up saying my internet is unstable. Everyone hear me? See me? Good.
I hear you. It's a little choppy, but you came back.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm saying unstable too, so it may be all over the place.
Oh, oh no, well, we'll make it through. Okay, just to give you guys a little brief overview for anyone that may be new here on what the Circle of Care is. So we are a 1-year statewide grant-funded project. We are funded through the Illinois Department of Human Services, Division of Substance Use Prevention and Recovery, with some of our funds coming from the American Rescue Plan Act. And I just want to say a huge, huge, huge thank you to IDHS and Super. We're so thankful that they were able to fund this project for us and that we were able to create all of these wonderful resources for all of you across the state. A 1-year program funded through IDHS and Super, some of our funds coming from the American Rescue Plan Act. Our program is created in partnership with the Illinois Family Resource Center and the Our House. So if you guys aren't familiar with how the Circle of Care fits, we actually fall underneath the umbrella of the Illinois Family Resource Center. Nancy Phillips is the coordinator over that program. She is here with us today. We fall right under the umbrella of the Illinois Family Resource Center. They've been around for the past 10 years. They just celebrated their 10-year anniversary. And it's really because of the wonderful work that they've been able to do across the past 10 years, which is how the Circle of Care program came to be and got funded. I also want to give a huge shout out to the Our House. They are our lead agency for both the Illinois Family Resource Center and the Circle of Care. Just a huge, huge thank you to our leadership team that we have for really trusting everyone on this project to help it soar, to help just helping all of the kiddos' families and natural helpers and professionals that we have across the state. Just all the thank yous in the world that we can give. Now, the briefest overview of the Circle of Care. Really, what our program aimed to do is two different things. One, we wanted to build this network of support for children, teens, youth, and families who have experienced some type of grief or loss due to substance use disorder. So, whether that was, a little one losing a loved one due to a substance use related death, such as an overdose, but we also wanted to be able to provide support for so many kiddos and families who are still living in the chaos, still living in homes where substance use disorder is present. That was a big focus of our project, was building this network of resources that will impact our children, teens, and families. On the flip side, though, in our 1 year, one of our goals was to train and equip as many of our natural helpers. So all of you that are here today, people that naturally interact with kiddos within their personal and professional roles. We wanted to train everyone across the state of Illinois on how to respond confidently and comfortably to children's grief that they may be experiencing due to substance use disorder. And so we're so excited that we feel we have done so much with this project, accomplished so much. And I'm just really excited that we're here today to tell you guys about how the whole year has went. So at this time, though, one of the things that I do want to do is, like I said, I want you guys to meet our team. So we have a good majority of our team that will be talking today about the different program components that they helped in creating. But here's just a little bit about all of our different team members we have. You can see we have a very robust team. We have people on our team that were able to bring different knowledge, backgrounds, and experiences to the table, which really helped us in creating such a robust and just amazing program. So here's our team members. You'll hear a lot of them talking throughout today. But at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Nancy. Also, my team, Circle of Care team, please feel free to introduce your guys' selves whenever you talk about each of your program components. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Nancy.
Hi, everybody. As Ambrosia said, I'm Nancy Phillips. I coordinate the Illinois Family Resource Center, of which I feel so blessed that we were given this opportunity to bring on this project this year. And we were talking about just kind of doing a little quick why we're here. And I think that if you look at the data that's up here, that's going to tell you why we're here. Some of the newest information that came out through the Journal of the American Medical Association Pediatrics in May gave us data that we didn't even have when we started this. In the US, 19 million children have at least one parent with a substance use disorder. 3.4 million children live with a parent with multiple substance use disorders. 6 million children have a parent with a medical health condition along with a substance use disorder, diagnosed separately, defined as two separate issues that are co-occurring. And 1 in 4 children live in families with a parent or a caregiver suffering with an alcohol or opioid use disorder. And with all this floating around out there, the Circle of Care emerged, and it really started back in December of 2023, right before Christmas, actually. Samantha Alonis, who's the Deputy Director for Super for Prevention, and I were on a couple of statewide committees and had kind of gotten to know each other, and it was pretty obvious a lot of our philosophy and our concerns and what we wanted to see happen were very similar. And she set up a meeting and said, let's chat. So our 45-minute meeting ended up being an hour and a half. And we decided that there's really some things that we could do together, that we could look at the children that were struggling in school, that her prevention people that were running programs in the school were running into, and what could we do to tie the family focus in on that. And that ended up generating 2 or 3 more meetings. And out of that was generated that we really needed to take a look at the need to help our children that were experiencing grief and loss due to substance use disorder in their family, whether it was through an unfortunate overdose or death, or all the children that are living in the chaos when there's substance use disorder and that grief and that loss of the things that they've lost in their life and that they're feeling, clear up through teens. The other thing is a lot of those children have been removed from the home, so there's a whole different focus looking at grief and loss. And so that discussion started, and she said, let's talk about this. And we took it to Teresa Purdue, who is the executive director for the Our House. And I said, this is what Samantha wants to talk about. And I would think that it'd be great if we are interested. And the rest is history. That meeting was set up. We all agreed that it was something we really were concerned about and were passionate about. And so there were a very busy few months of getting it all put into order and looking at what we were going to do and getting a group together that could support this massive effort that was placed on us, and not effort, this experience, this wonderful opportunity. And what it has evolved into is just mind-boggling to me. I think that Ambrosia has led one of the best teams. And yes, I do personally know some of the people on this team. Um, and I've gotten to know the others that I didn't over this year. But they've done such an incredible job. And we're here because of them, because we've been able to work through this year. And we will see that it continues in one way or another to support our kiddies. So that's it. I appreciate you all being on here, and I appreciate every one of you that has taken an interest in doing this, because it's really a passion of mine along with the rest of the team.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Every time that you tell the story on how the Circle of Care came to be, I could listen to it all day, every day, I think. Because I just love to see where it started and what we've been able to do with this program. So thank you so much. Now at this time, I don't know, I know we were just talking how we're visual people. I'm a very visual person. And usually whenever I go through presentations, I love whenever people are able to give me an agenda or like a lay of the land on what we're going to be talking about. And so these are some of the next coming topics that we're going to talk about. You can see we have all of our different program components in there. But first, I wanted to talk with you guys a little bit about how with the Circle of Care, one of the big things that we wanted to do was incorporate family and youth voice into this project. And so we were able to do two different things to incorporate that family and youth voice into the Circle of Care program. And really what it helped us do is it helped us inform the work that we want to do, helped us create these very robust resources that were going to be applicable to those who have experienced these experiences. And so there's two different ways we did this. The first, we held a couple of different peer listening sessions. And so what that looked like is we really recruited and encouraged, people with lived experience from substance use disorder. We really encouraged, peer support workers, individuals who had experienced substance use disorder in their household as a child. We wanted all of their lived experiences, all of their voices, and we wanted to bring them to the table and do a couple of different youth or peer listening sessions with them. And so we were able to do two of those peer listening sessions, and I'll get into those in just a second. But we were also able to do some youth listening sessions as well. One of the ones that we did was at a teen institute. And then the second one we did was with a youth advisory council that we have here in the state of Illinois. And so with the youth listening sessions, we came into those where we did not know 100% for sure if the teens that were going to be participating had directly experienced substance use disorder in their households. And so whenever we asked them questions about their experiences, we framed the questions in a couple of different ways, like if they have experienced it, or what did they think it would feel or look like if they did experience it. And so what I just wanted to pull for you guys was some of those lived experience voices from these listening sessions. So this first slide is from our peer listening session. So we asked our participants questions surrounding like what did their home life look like? What did support look like in their home? What were their feelings when drugs or alcohol were present in the home? What were their emotions surrounding the loss of a loved one due to substances? We also asked questions that were more in regards to like stigma. So what were the hurtful things that people said to you after, or that you heard after that loss that you had? Or what were the helpful things? Who were the supportive people in your life? And what would you say to a child going through a similar experience? And so, really, from these peer listening sessions, what we were able to find is that there was a whole lot of stigma that these individuals had experienced, which then they took and internalized it and it turned into shame. And so, that's what we were able to find with our peer listening sessions, with our youth listening sessions. This was actually a couple of answers to one single question that we had asked. But like I said, with the youth listening sessions, we wanted to ask questions surrounding, some of the similar topics that we did during the peer listening sessions. So, what did a safe and supportive home look like to you? What helped you get through tough times? What did your support system look like? These answers on the screen specifically came from the question, what does it feel like living in a home where drugs or alcohol are present? And so, what we were able to quickly find out from the specific youth listening session with the Youth Advisory Council, like I had said, we had no idea going into these if these children or these teens had directly experienced substance use disorder in their household.
I got on my phone,
But
so you
we
can use the chair
quickly
again.
found out that all of them had noted that they had experienced substance use disorder in their family, their friends, and their household. And we were able to see a lot of different themes come up in these youth listening sessions as well. Specifically, that ambiguous loss. I always go to the quote that's on the left. It feels like you are constantly mourning someone that is alive, and it is very hard to love someone more than they love themselves. So I just wanted to, before we even get into our program components, I just wanted to present these very powerful, impactful quotes and voices from people with lived experience, to really show you guys this is what helped guide us in our work with the Circle of Care, creating these amazing resources for you guys. And so now at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Megan. If you want to tell everyone who you are, Megan, and tell them about what your piece in the Circle of Care project was.
Okay, thank you so much, Ambrosia. As Ambrosia said, my name is Megan, Megan Reagan. Yes, it rhymes. I am the executive director of the Southern Illinois Resource and Advocacy Center. And in the Circle of Care, I had the privilege of playing the role of researcher. This is something that I am very passionate about, especially whenever it comes to data and to getting a better understanding of the current systems that we have in place. And so whenever I was approached with this opportunity, it was an automatic yes, absolutely, because this is just such an important topic. And like Ambrosia said, this is, the people that are behind the scenes on Circle of Care. All of us have some sort of personal stake in this, whether it is, from our own lived experience or from seeing the lived experience of people that we work with. This is a topic that each of us genuinely care about and genuinely want to see the children and the families in Illinois have a better support system in place to navigate. So, we did, to get kind of the ball rolling with everything. The first thing that we had to do was really understand what is the current state of our system in order to know how to proceed, right? We had to know what information is out there, what types of support services are out there. So I completed a landscape analysis of grief support services for children impacted by substance use disorder related loss and grief. Now, one thing I will say is that this quickly became evident that there were very minimal grief support services that were specific to this type of loss and this type of population. So one of the things that we began to look at, that we kind of broadened our scope a little bit, is looking at just what type of grief support services are available across the state of Illinois for children and families in general. So our data focus for this, we were looking first and foremost at non-clinical support services. So these are support groups, these are recreational camps, all of just basically anything that wouldn't fall underneath that clinical service umbrella related to counseling or therapy. And then we also looked at specialized programs. So grief-specific camps, grief-specific retreats, grief education. We really wanted to get a very comprehensive view of what is going on in the state of Illinois. So prior to us completing this landscape analysis, there were really no state-specific databases or directory or anything like that had information to support this population. And when I say that, I'm not necessarily even talking about, the population of children impacted by SUD-related loss. I'm talking about children and families in general who are experiencing grief. There was really no good database or directory or way to find resources if you need them. Now, one thing I know for sure, is whenever you are in a difficult situation, whenever you are navigating kind of the throes of grief or the aftermath of a really, potentially traumatic situation, one of the things that you oftentimes don't want to do or can't wrap your head around is really kind of digging in and trying to find support, right? So that was really the driving force behind this, is how can we make this as accessible as possible? How can we make this as comprehensive as possible so that people can quickly get connected to the resources and services that they need? Throughout our landscape analysis, a few trends emerged that, may not be surprising if you've spent any time working in the state of Illinois or done any research around the state of Illinois. We did notice that, our resources are distributed across Illinois in different concentrations. For the purposes of this landscape analysis, we used the IDHS regional map, which kind of lumps the state into five regions, with region 1 being Cook County and region 5 being the southernmost southern Illinois. And what we found is that the highest concentration of resources related to this topic, about 40% actually, were in Cook County. So Cook County, obviously it's very populated, but it is a very small portion of a very large state, right? So that was the first thing that we really noticed. We saw in our collar counties like DuPage County, Kane County, Lake County, Will, McHenry, about 25% of resources across the state were located there. Central Illinois claimed about 15%. And then Southern Illinois, which based on population, has its population and geographic spread, I should say. It's a fairly large area. We only had about 10% of those resources. So one of the things that we noticed, there were some strengths, right, that we noticed about these systems. I will say that the strengths really varied depending on the geography of the region. One thing that we noticed is that there were several hospice affiliated resources. There was a very strong presence of that. That was actually something that I learned in this project, is that hospice, funeral homes, oftentimes any type of end of life services oftentimes offer some sort of grief support services, or can at least connect families to those types of services. We also saw that there was a relatively robust offering of children's programming, but unfortunately those were located mostly in those urban areas like Cook County. And then the last thing that we noticed is that thankfully there was a growing trend of virtual options available for people to seek services. So people or organizations that would provide virtual services to families and children across the state of Illinois, which did open a few doors for some of these areas where we see significant gaps. So moving into our gaps here, obviously we have our geographic disparities, significant service gaps in our rural counties. We still see this even after our landscape analysis. And even after kind of going through this project, is, rural communities we know are historically under-resourced and underserved. And so that is demonstrated in this data as well. Another thing that we noticed is language barriers. There are some providers that we were able to identify that did offer services in, say, Spanish. There was a handful of other languages that were offered, but in the grand scheme of things, it is a very small percentage of all of the different resources that we were able to identify that do offer bilingual services. And then lastly, we noticed that there was kind of a gap in service availability for special populations. So thinking specifically about, the LGBTQ community, people with disabilities, and especially male specific support. Those were areas that we noted a limited amount of services in. So we completed the landscape analysis. We identified all of these resources. We used a mixed methods approach where we had a survey. We collected data from our training participants. Ambrosia and Terry collected a number of resources from their partners that they had done outreach with. And we ended up with over 600 grief support services identified throughout the state of Illinois. You can go to the next slide. Okay. And what we did with those 639, actually, to be specific here, clinical and non-clinical grief support services, is we created grief support service directory. This directory lives on the Illinois Family Resource Center's webpage. If you scan the QR code there, it will take you right to the directory. These on this slide here, there are a couple screenshots so you can see exactly what it looks like. The map there, one of the things that became very evident as we were after we were through the research part into building the directory, is that there were still several counties around Illinois that there were no grief support services. And that's common, right? If you are in a rural area, you know that it is pretty typical to have to drive from one county to, say, another county 30-45 minutes away to be able to receive some type of services. So one of the adjustments that we made there, so that we were able to really make sure access to what they needed, is including those neighboring counties in the search. We also included an option to show all statewide results. So these, virtual options, or these support services that are available to anyone in the state of Illinois. So if you navigate to the Illinois Family Resource Center website, go to the Circle of Care tab, and then go to the Grief Support Services directory, you can simply enter the county that you're looking at, make your couple of selections there if you want to include neighboring counties, and if you also want to include statewide results, and then a list will populate. We formed Shane, our wonderful web designer. He created this database so that it would be easy to navigate on a phone or a computer. You can see there where it says Northern Illinois Hospice. That is a sample of what one of our directory listings looks like. So you can see that we have some tabs. We wanted to make sure that people were able to quickly grab the information that they needed regarding insurance, regarding bilingual services, regarding, into how much it's going to cost, all of these different things. So I just encourage you, we are very, very, very proud of this directory. And personally, I know I have used it just in my role. I've used it several times since it has been up and operational, just to be able to provide some information. So again, this directory, we didn't come up with this out of nowhere. It was actually about a year's worth of research and really kind of hitting the streets on getting that information. So I'm very thankful that I got to be a part of this, and I am going to go ahead and pass it back to Ambrosia.
Thank you so much, Megan. I think the directory just speaks to all of the hard work and research you have done with this project. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to turn things over now to Pam. She is our online resource toolkit developer for the Circle of Care program. She has created some amazing, amazing toolkits for you guys. And Pam, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. That way you can start sharing and pop us to the toolkits.
That sounds wonderful. Actually, before you do that, there was another slide to go.
Yes.
Thank you. I am very happy to be here, and I have been absolutely happy to be part of the Circle of Care. It's been an incredible thing, an incredible joy and privilege. All the people in the circle, on the circle, are scary smart and enormously competent, intimidatingly so. I have the easiest thing to do. The resource toolkit was the easiest of the things. But first I have to say something about Nancy, who's to blame for my presence here, largely. She talked about the meeting that she had with Samantha, where they ended up talking for what, an hour and a half? Samantha got off easy. When I met Nancy, it was like 35 years ago when I joined the prevention field. I had decided I was going to invent the prevention field. So I didn't know it had already existed. So I joined it and was working for Prevention First, which was called something else at the time. But Nancy and I were paired together to share rooms at a conference. And It was not an hour and a half that we talked. I don't know if we got a couple hours sleep. I don't know what we did, but we were gonna make all kinds of trouble, and we made some trouble. Yeah. We were a lot about children in families affected by substance use disorders. Um, there it runs deep in all the people in this circle. And I think probably all the people who are in this room, in this invisible Zoom room. So the resource toolkits, um, the real heavy lifting for the resource toolkits is on the part of the people who designed and wrote and developed all this incredible stuff
Jack.
that is out there on the internet. And the thing about children in families affected by substance use disorders is that the grief that they experience, the incidents that their families experience, are not the kind of things that a lot of people are going to want to talk to them about. A lot of people are going to know what to say about. The stigma is so incredibly strong that whatever awkwardness we as a species or as a culture have about grief is doubled when it's children's grief and quadrupled or more when it has anything to do with a stigmatized condition like substance use disorders or even just incidental use of something that kills you. So there's all these resources out there, but a lot of people don't know about them. The other thing is, more than 35 years ago, I was taking an L through past the Henry Horner homes in Chicago. I'm in Chicago, where we hog a lot of the resources and a lot of the people too, though. But I was taking an L past that, and I was reading an article about services when they helped children who had been traumatized in gun violence in the housing projects, and then of course the funding was gone, and so they moved on. And at that point, I developed a dream, which really I have not until the Circle of Care been able to be part of, which is a dream of preparing community people, just folks, just people, the lady down the hall who doesn't yell at you and you can cry around her, the barber who cuts your hair and says a couple things and understands, the teacher who cuts you a break when you're experiencing something horrible but you don't talk about it. Empowering the natural helpers in communities is so powerful. And I think it's the responsibility of everybody in these fields, because we're kind of multiple fields. Anyway, so there's all these resources, and my job was to link to them and to do that in an engaging manner. And so we started because we had to ramp up quickly. We only had a year, and we wanted to get something on there before Jessica started her training. And wait till you hear Jessica. Oh, incredible. So we decided to do a sampling of resources in 3 collections by age, little kids, grade school, high school, that thing is simply. And then we had a chance to sit back, and we were able to develop some more categories, a deeper dive into loss, grief, and support. Like, what exactly is it we're dealing with? How do we understand it at depth? Because if you understand it shallowly, you're going to step on something. Expanding the reach of our resources, because there's never enough resources. And then children's books. And I tell you, when you are putting together a resource collection of children's books on loss, grief, and healing, the pictures on the books will just break your heart. So I'm going to share my screen, take you to the place. This is what I'm going to put this thing up there. Whoop, come on. All right, this is what the website looks like. This is what the resource toolkit does. So takes you down, you go down 3 collections by children's age. And of course, the greatest joy of doing something like this is finding these pictures of kids, like looking at pictures of kids for hours and hours and hours. But I got one that has a noodle coming out of her mouth, and one who's got a chicken. But the 3 collections, let's say if we want to see resources for very young children, you just click in this view thing, and there's the noodle. And there are resources for very young children. So we have a category about very young children, and each of those little things is a different resource. You can go in there, you get that resource, you say ooh ah, it opens in a different tab, so you can always come back. So we've got about very young children, the supporters role, and in the words of kids who have experienced grief, very, very important. And then we have age-appropriate activities, which is a lot of activities. And really the weird thing is, I was lucky enough to have coworkers on this who knew where the resources were. This was not something I knew. And the enormous number of things that people came up with and resources, it's just incredible, because there's a depth of understanding and knowledge about that in a lot of members of the team, particularly Jessica and Nancy. Just incredible, the number of things. So let's see, if I wanted to go back to, yeah, it worked. Then we have the next thing, a deeper dive into loss, grief, and support. So we have something on or several things on substance-affected families when life complicates grief, and being a more effective supporter. And again, any of these will take you to a little explanation, and then a bunch of resources. So then if I go back, it worked the last time. It worked this time too. Expanding the reach of resources. And this is not, expanding the reach of resources is not about expanding resources, right? It's about getting them to people. How do you learn about the population you serve if there are differences that traditionally in our society have gotten in the way? How do you blend that? There are a bunch of resources in Spanish, and if anybody can find us like $1 million grant, we're going to have it translated into every language. But we have lots and lots that are available in Spanish, and I love that picture. I'm gonna click on this just because I love that picture. Look at that beautiful face. Anyway, so it's got just a ton of stuff in Spanish. Maybe not a whole ton. I'm not sure how much those files weigh. Several kilobytes or whatever, megabytes. This may be my favorite picture, books for babies and preschoolers. They read out of the back of their heads, and books that span preschool. So we have all these children's books for various ages. And let's see, do you have any more things that we haven't looked at? Interesting. Okay, oh, this is what I want. Oop. Okay, I lost my screen. See, that's what happens to people like me. I'm so busy thinking about what I'm doing. So that's, and the children's books, yes. And that's the end of the resources. So I will pass it on to others. And again, just we have a lot of gratitude, and we have a lot of gratitude to all the people who have been our constituents and our cheerers and our friends in this effort. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Pam. We love the toolkits, and following one of our first training sessions that we had so many people that were able to look at the toolkits, and they gave us so much great feedback, and they loved them. So thank you, Pam. I'm going to restart sharing my screen, and I am actually going to turn it over to Jessica for us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Jessica Porte. I was brought onto the project as the trainer specific to the community-based trading. So just to share a little bit about me and how this project kind of came, or how I got folded in, and I'm so grateful that I did, was my background is in childhood bereavement. And so I worked in hospice agencies as well as school programming and bereavement camps for over a decade. And so I not only worked in helping build curriculum and helping children who were impacted by a death, but then also helping find those protective factors, those tools, and helping increase those factors that we know support children after a loss. With that, I also was a children's counselor at the Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation, children impacted by, who had a loved one who was impacted by a substance use disorder. And I served children ages 7 to 12 years old. And what that really did for me was give me this blended experience of not only working with children in grief and loss after the death of a person, but when my experience brought me to Betty Ford, I started to see and recognize something that we don't always label loss when children are being impacted by substance use disorder. They know so much of their environment has changed. They know that they are missing and longing and yearning for something or someone, or the lack of safety or feeling or unpredictability. That's all rooted in this feelings of loss, that what happens when a substance use disorder affects a family. And so this intersection really gave us an opportunity to look at not only one, how do these two fields really create a robust, holistic way of approaching and supporting families, but then how can we get these two fields to recognize their overlap and start working together and collaborate in a community? Because, right, not one agency can be ever the whole well-being and serve a complete family. It takes a village, right? And so we are super grateful for the state of Illinois that all came in to do this training. So let me give you a little bit of the statistics, the prevalence of why this training matters. This training was entitled Threads of Hope, Weaving Support for Substance Use and Grief for Children and Families. And so here's a little bit of the landscape, right? So in the statistics or the prevalence of childhood bereavement, 1 in 12 children will actually experience the death of a parent or a sibling before they turn 18. And that number more than doubles by the time they turn 25. And so what we know about that, when children in that developmental stage, in that time where they are very system dependent, is that when they have something like a death, that actually has an impact on healthy development, right? It's considered an ACE, an adverse childhood experience. And so what we know is that grief-informed communities, caregivers, educators, strong support system, and healthy coping skills all help mitigate that. Those are all things that community members, natural helpers, educators, and professionals can do. So we wanted to make sure we included everyone in that. But of the number of 1 in 12, 1 in 5 bereaved children is due to a substance use related death. So when we look at that specifically to the state of Illinois, we can see that 1,216 Illinois children lost a parent to an overdose in 2022. When we looked at a further study, I wanted to include this just to also see the nationwide prevalence of it, right? That from 2011 to 2021, over 300,000 children had a parent die due to drugs and alcohol. And so when we looked at the statistics overall, the number was around 600,000 that had died to drugs and alcohol. So more than half had children who were affected by that. And I would even venture to say it's more if you take away and strip away a nuclear family and look at it at how blended and who can that significant person be impacted by, there's probably more children affected by that. So when we look at that with the intersectionality of substance use related loss, we can also see that 1 in 8 children lived in a household with a caregiver who has a substance use disorder. And a common misconception is that substance use disorder is about the one person who's affected. And what we really wanted to elevate and recognize is substance use is a family disease that benefits from judgment-free support that include the children. So when we shift that narrative, what we start to recognize is that we need to create awareness and education that combats what everyone has talked about, the stigma that keeps families feeling isolated from support, resources, and increases shame. So when we think about how shame impacts a family, substance use related loss, sometimes when I go towards different trainings or I'm working with different people, they might tell me, oh, but they didn't have a substance use disorder. It was a recreational use, or it was accidental, or related to maybe another stigmatized loss like homicide or suicide. Oftentimes, that even differentiation there of not wanting to be associated with a substance use disorder is all rooted in stigma, right? No one wants to be their person to be labeled as an addict. No child wants to think that they're grieving someone who is considered bad. And so it was really pivotal to understand why we misunderstand by and large as a community what substance use disorder is, and how can we help inform communities what it actually is and what it is not, so that we can actually be healthy helpers and connect people when they feel like they can't help and feel supported by their communities. So if we look at this, I like to think about this. I'm very visual. I work with kids, so I use playful things. Is that I thought about shame in this way, is that if anyone's familiar with When Horton Hears a Who, right? And so Horton is this elephant from Dr. Seuss that all of a sudden he hears the voices from this little plant and he hears someone. And I like to think of what shame does is all of a sudden it shrinks our capacity to be seen and heard. That's what stigma does to our families, right? And Horton hears these voices. And he leans in and he says, no, no, we need to protect them. They are here. They are valuable. Even if you cannot see them, even if you don't put them in your vision, they are of value. And he advocates to everyone who says, there's nothing wrong here. There's no one here. And he says, no, someone is here, right? Until all of a sudden they start screaming and amplifying their voices. We are here. We are here. We are here. I like to think that by creating the advocacy and education around these, we amplify those who are impacted by that stigma and shame, so that eventually they become the Horton, and then they can turn around and help those who need voices need to be amplified. So I'm a lover of children's books and Dr. Seuss, so there you go for you all. So the 4 components that I wanted to just overall go over the Threads of Hope training, then we'll go into a little bit of the data and the feedback. It was a training for all. And so we recognize that children don't exist in a vacuum, right? They are part of a system, not only within their relational system of whatever that family looks like, but also attached to an education system, a community system. They're impacted by policies, healthcare, all of these different areas. And so instead of funneling our training on any particular sector, we wanted to make this open to all. And we saw a really great opportunity in that in helping people know that where their resources were coming from outside of their sector, right? So we're really seeing a lot of value in what it means to become unsiloed, right? Where can I find people who where my scope ends, where does their scope begin? And now here's an opportunity. We're in a training together and I have a name. How valuable to have a name. And so while this was a beautiful opportunity, it did have some limitations, because depending on where people were in their scope, we had different opportunities to educate, where maybe some others had more education and where others did not. And so, we had to take that pace and slow back, but we saw the value of putting everyone in together to really create a collaborative effort around children and families affected by substance use. That leads to the connections of systems of care. And so this was really helping not only the sectors talk together, but these fields, from mental health, the substance use and recovery, and grief support systems. How are they integrating, understanding how they can co-collaborate and understand maybe where my scope ends or where my services are really helpful. And all of a sudden I recognize I'm not just supporting someone in their substance use. This is really becoming about the grief after their person died. Who are my people? What does that collaboration look like? And so that is helping become not only a family-centered approach, but a child-led approach. And then, of course, to educate. This training was 2 days, and I'll go into that. And so if you weren't all here just to hang out, you hopefully left with some education. And so that was to highlight the intersectionality between the mental health, recovery, and grief-informed fields. And it was to help to understand how stigma impacts all three of those and what is associated with that, and how can we become educated so we can start to dismantle and smash the stigma and help replace it with helpful information. And understand grief as it relates to loss, including but not only death. Oftentimes, when you hear the word grief, it is so strongly associated with death that we do not recognize the experiences from people who are having and contending with living losses. And so for families who have a substance use disorder or substance affected families, and then experience a death, we have to recognize there's a grief timeline that started way before the death. And so how can we understand that? Because it informs that process. And then equip, develop age-appropriate language you all can utilize together, build compassionate, evidence-based strategies and opportunities to include children in the process, and help strengthen communities. So these were the 4 areas that we were hoping to enrich. And so when we started to look at that, just the logistics breakdown, it was a 2-day training, 6 hours each day. We had breaks, we had lunch, but it was virtual only. And so we recognize that with virtual, there's some great opportunities and there's some limitations, right? But this training was done through January through March. I live in San Diego, California. I really wanted to be in person, but I had a lovely team that informed me January through March in person is very difficult due to the weather. I don't know what that meant, but I trusted them. And then when we were online and I saw that things were freezing over and things were cold, I understood. So virtual was a wonderful way to make sure everyone could be present, safe, and warm. There were 5 training opportunities that coincide with what Megan had shared earlier that were specific to regions. Now, that didn't mean that you can only attend that region, but we did try to be purposeful that if we brought a community of helpers together, that they were seeing people directly in their space so they can collaborate. If for some reason they could attend another training. So while that was how we made it up, it wasn't a require or a mandate depending on if you wanted to go to another training. CEs were offered. And just to let you know, if you did not get to watch the trainings, it is recorded and housed on the website. So just know that that's there for you. And then what I like by the feedback that we got and just acknowledging the different foundational knowledge in either one area or the other, the training is actually broken down into modules and sections. So if you just want to get enriched in talking to your kids about substance use disorder or wanting to get a lay of just childhood development, those are broken up for you. So that's meant to cater to maybe your style of learning. So at the end of this, we were able to train 437 total amongst all of the different areas. And so of that, 324 finished program evaluations. And so for anyone here who has done grant funding, you know how important it is to get those evaluations. So for those who were able to complete, thank you. I feel like that number is pretty good considering all. So of those evaluations, this is some of the data we collected that shared how it was, who we were able to reach and what was helpful. So by region, Chicago area and Northwestern Illinois was about half of our attendees. And then North Central and Southern made up about the other half. 1.9% came from either statewide or nationwide. So there were some people either connected through different agencies, alliance, or memberships who wanted to learn about this programming and attended, even though it wasn't necessarily components were relative to Illinois State, they wanted to get the educational piece. And then sector here shows, while we wanted to include all the sectors, how that actually divvied up And so on the sector side, I just want to make a note that people could write more than one. So there's an intersectionality even in their roles. And so this really helped give a diverse population into our trainings. So some of the results I just wanted to highlight here, understanding and knowledge. In this area, both there was an increased understanding of stigma impact, improved confidence in applying strategies, clarity of collaborating strategies, and enhanced understanding, oh, I see a typo. Let's pretend we all don't see that, of grief frameworks. And so basically what the data showed is that over 90% in all of those areas, people felt more confident post-training and saw significant change after walking through the 2-day modules. So this was some really great data to hear about some of the things that we introduced in those training modules. What we also had the opportunity to learn was where was some immediate confidence or comfort changes that happen. So there was a pre-post quick little test asking where their confidence was or comfort was in particular areas and topics. And there were some areas where we saw significant change and some where we didn't. Some areas where we saw some change is supporting children bereaved by substance use related death. Before the training, we were at about 26 to 44%, and after training, 77 to 91%, which is great. Comfort in discussing substance use and grief with young people was 42 to 68% before training. After, it was 71 to 93%. Some areas where we didn't see a lot was the community collaboration in 2 regions. There was definitely some notable gains, 61 to 81% from 2 to 92 to 95%. But there was also not a lot of change in the other groups. So it might have been a change by 1 to 3%. And so what that tells us is they either might have things that are working for them already, and there was maybe something not new that we introduced, or additional approaches or support might be needed to help enhance those collaboration opportunities. And so before I go any further, before I go into high and lows, I also want to give a nod to right now to Megan, because she synthesized this data, not I. So I just want to be really grateful for those numbers that we were able to have there. So the highs here that I want to go over that were taken and synthesized, and that was people really enjoyed the interactive format. Virtual training is very hard, right? For all of us who sit on Zoom after Zoom after Zoom. For something like this as a topic, we wanted to make sure people felt engaged. So we oscillated between an education or lecture module and then having opportunities to either have discussion, activities, or breakout rooms. And it seemed for the majority, a lot of people enjoyed that. People enjoyed the presenter quality. I was the presenter, and then practical resources that were given matched with the real life examples. So taking what was academic and evidence-based and helping it apply to real life situations and what that could look like, and those collaborative learning opportunities. In the lows, much again, the virtual component, the structure and breakout rooms, people really wanted a little bit more structure around what that could look like. Some breakout rooms were highly active, and then some had dark screens, right? And so those are those components that if we were in person, we can help facilitate, enhance, and enrich in presence. And so those were some little barriers that we had in the virtual space. Again, I mentioned differing tracks for people who have more foundational knowledge. And then I didn't see the last one. I'm sorry, and the technical issues, yeah, and company resources. So those are just hoping for more resources that would collide with the slides. But the slides now are available on the website, just to let you know. I did add this slide a last minute. We did get one in-person session, and this was at the National Alliance for Children's Grief Symposium in Kansas City, Illinois. And so I just wanted to take note that this is part of I'm part of a membership with this field. Anyone here can be a member if you just want to be grief informed and access to webinars and other things. But the National Alliance for Children's Grief Symposium is always looking for ways to enhance their best practices and look at where the gaps were. So we brought Threads of Hope, a condensed version that focused on the part they didn't know, which was substance affected families and what we need to understand from that mental health perspective. And we shared with those professionals. What was great is there was an empty seat in the house. We even had some people sitting on the floor, and we had one therapy dog. We get to add that to our data, that we had one therapy dog that attended. And so these were the wonderful helpers that we had in the room. I will also note that 2 are carrying stuffies. I bring my children's stuffies everywhere, and I take selfies with them so they know that they got to learn too. And so the things I want to share, and I want to end it here because I feel that these are the parts that matter the most, was the words after that were shared after the training. These were the ways that really create the heart-mind connection and bring those two closer together, that make us feel empowered and that we can do this work. This healed the inner child in me in ways I was not expecting. Even though I work with parents, it was so helpful to help the whole families and have more resources myself. You made a few of us cry with how powerful and useful this information was, and probably the most useful training for real life situations that I have ever taken. So those were some very powerful words from the people in the room who attended. And so when I would like to give back is to end with this quote. So if I started with Dr. Seuss, I'm going to end with Dr. Seuss because I'm all about bookends here. And I'm going to end with the Lorax, where he shares, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. And so the fact that there are people here in this room, that there were over 300 people in those attendees, and all of the people who connected with our entire team, that shows that there's a whole awful lot of people who care. And that is amazing. And so wherever you're at in your education, your work, the position you do this work from, I want you all to remember that kids don't care how much you know, right? They want to know that you care. And so you have the most powerful position to do the work and know that you have a community around you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I know whenever I attended all 5 of the Threads of Hope trainings, I know I was crying about every single time with how powerful and impactful it was. It was absolutely amazing training, and I know I've told Jessica and our team a lot in passing. I've had so many people that have chatted with me after they've taken the training and saying how impactful it was, how they were able to use what they learned in the training in real life. And I think that is something that we really, really wanted to see with the trainings. And that I'm so thankful that we're getting that feedback. Now, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Doug. He is our part-time law enforcement officer that's on our team. He's been assisting us with the Handle with Care initiative. So I'm going to let him talk a little bit about Handle with Care.
Thank you, Ambrosia. I'm Officer Doug Cochran with the Kansas Police Department. And as Ambrosia mentioned, I am the law enforcement liaison between the Handle with Care and the law enforcement agencies within the state of Illinois. So many times law enforcement is seen as non-caring, non-approachable. And through this Handle with Care project, I really think that we're making inroads in that. This is a great program with law enforcement and educators working together to be able to help kids who have been exposed to traumatic events or been a victim of a traumatic event. A little side note, when I was 5 years old, which has been 1,000 years ago, I lost my father in a construction accident. And had Handle with Care been implemented back then, I probably could have been re-engaged in schoolwork and in social events much, much quicker. So now to the present, how this particular program works, and Ambrosia, if you just want to scroll through mine, I'm going to talk as this goes forward. When law enforcement is dispatched to a call for service, and usually in Illinois, we have some larger agencies, we have multiple officers show up to events. But for the most part in Illinois, it's a single officer or a single deputy who shows up, no matter what the event is. Once we get there and identify what is going on, whether it's a violation of an order of protection, whether it's a domestic, whether it's something as like a traffic accident, and we get the scene safe, get the victim and the suspect separated, and children are involved, what we really need to do is put that child in a safe place, which in most areas, like I said, in Illinois, especially the rural areas, would be the back of our squad car. And what we're able to do is gather the child's name, we get the child's age and the school if possible. And at that point, simple process, one of the simplest processes law enforcement can do is radio your dispatch, give them the name, give them the age. If the school is known, at that point, dispatch then contacts the contact at that school and just say the child's name, handle with care. No additional information is given. Nothing about the event is given. What that does, that allows the educators that next day to give that child what it needs, whether it be a place to sleep, a place to take a shower, food they may not have been able to eat that evening because of that event, or just understand why that child is not engaged in its schoolwork. So it's a great process. It's a process in which it helps the children move forward and try to get some normalance in their life again. But it's a real simple process for law enforcement. And for those that are on here that may be in law enforcement, we have designed and indicated and being able to give out some different information. We have, and I have an example here. This is an indicator card that we give law enforcement to keep in your squad cars, your duty bags, and that basically kind of gives you what handle with care, when it's used, when it's not used. Another item in which we've developed is a policy template. We all know law enforcement, like so many other agencies, is policy driven. And what we have done is we've developed a policy of handle with care that law enforcement can take and massage to their specific policies and protocols and implement it. So we have that. We have it in a Word document. We can provide law enforcement. And I know Ambrosia may mention a little later, but I think it's worth mentioning now. We've also developed care bags, and these care bags are age appropriate. We have them in English, we have them in Spanish. Keep in your squad cars, keep in your classrooms. And when these children, especially in the squad cars, when we put them in the back during that event, we want to give them something that can distract them, to take their mind off the event. And these bags are a wonderful way to do that. And they are free of charge, and we can give those out to any agency who wants them, as many as we want. We have plenty of them. But this is an excellent way to have law enforcement seen in a positive way, educators seen in a positive way, and working together to help children get through a traumatic event. And so many times the children are forgotten about, especially when law enforcement gets on scene and the event really escalates. And we don't want the child to be exposed to that, whether, again, they're a victim or they're just exposed to it. So, and I'm available. My contact information is Ambrosia will post. I'm available anytime, phone call, email. I can speak to your educators. I can speak to your groups. I can speak to any of your law enforcement in your area and try to get this implemented. We want to keep this process moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Doug. Doug has been very busy over the last couple of weeks talking with law enforcement agencies, schools. We've also, with the project, we did partner with the SIU School of Medicine, Liesel Winger. And so we were able to hold some Handle with Care discussion sessions. We held them from February until like the end of May. We actually were able to record those sessions, and we do have it, as of last night, available on our website for you guys to view at any point in time, to learn a little bit more about Handle with Care and how you can get that implemented in your community, or we can connect you directly with Doug and he can talk with you guys. And so now at this time, I'm going to talk about what we said was our little component with our project, which has, if anyone knows me, has turned into a huge, huge component. I feel like all I do is see comfort bags in my sleep, which they're so beautiful, so that's okay. But really with our Threads of Hope training and then with Handle with Care, we've been giving out these comfort bags for kids to people who were in attendance for either one or both of the sessions. And so really what we did was we designed these comfort bags for first responders, community helpers, and professionals to give out to children and teens who have experienced any of these three things on the screen. So we did not make the items in the bags necessarily very grief specific because we wanted it to be more about social emotional learning for kiddos, teaching them how to navigate whatever emotion or feeling that they're going through. Another thing I realized, I did not put any of the inside pictures of our comfort bags on any of the slides, but I'll be holding some up throughout. Of course, my little Mimble ball, he's so cute. He's the cow one. This is an example of one of the items that's in our bags. It's been fun. So with the comfort bags, we purchased and have been giving out across the state 14,400 people. You heard that right. 14,400. And I've got some pictures here in a second to show you guys a little bit of our comfort bag journey is what I've been calling it. But with the comfort bags, like I said, we really wanted these bags to get into the hands of all of our natural helpers for them to give to the kiddos that they work with in their communities. And so just a little bit more about the items in the bags and kind of our reasoning for choosing these specific items in the bags is we wanted like transitional items in the bags. So items that are really comforting for kiddos, help them in reducing stress, and they ultimately just play a role in emotional regulation. So we have our Mimble Ball, which is super, super comforting. In every single bag, we have our bookmark with Jerry Moe's The 7 C's on it. And on the flip side, we have some teen helplines. And then also in every single bag, we have 2 wooden hearts and a thing of markers. And we also have a letter that goes in every single bag that just tells the kiddos like, hi, I'm your comfort bag, tells them a little bit about their bag. And then on the flip side, it gives them a prompt on how they can use the wooden hearts and the markers for an activity. Say they want to color on the markers, to remember the person that they've lost, or maybe they want to color on the markers and give it to their loved one that they don't see very often. Another just like reasoning behind the bags. Oh, I forgot. We also have books and journals in the bags. I have one of the books here with me right now in my heart. It's a book about feelings. But just another reasoning behind the bags, I've been able to do a lot of research and know that there are other programs across multiple states who are giving out similar bags, whether they call them crisis bags, whether they call them comfort bags, whatever they're calling them, they all have a very similar purpose. And so really with these bags, another just reasoning behind the items in there is for them to give like a redirection to that child. So research has shown that whenever a child is given something in times of like a stressful or traumatic event, that kind of redirects their attention to whatever they're given, which can, in some situations, make it almost like a positive impact out of the event. So just another strong reason behind our comfort bags. Now I want to show you guys some pictures and give you a little bit of a description on them. This comfort bag journey has just been so amazing. And also at this time, I just want to say a huge, huge, huge thank you to our distribution sites. So basically what our comfort bag journey has looked like is, with our comfort bags, we've been giving them out to people all across our 5 regions. And so in order to get these bags out, we were thinking maybe we'll mail and ship them to people. And then we came up with a decision, let's just rent a U-Haul cargo van and we're just going to drive all of these bags to everyone across the state. And so that's what we did, people. I'm so thankful, and a huge thank you to all of our House staff, employees. They have been absolutely amazing, driving these comfort bags all across the state. A huge thank you to all of our distribution sites. So these are individuals that we partnered with their agency, and what essentially that looked like is we would promote to all of our comfort bag recipients and say, hey, we are going to be at this location in your region, and your comfort bags are going to be here on this day and time. You can pick them up, or our distribution site will house them for you until you're able to come and pick them up. So a huge thank you. We had about 9 distribution sites across the state, across our, well, counting the Hour House, we had 10. So we had about 10 distribution sites across the whole state of Illinois. Huge thank you to our delivery drivers and our distribution sites and all of our comfort bag recipients as well. So this first picture that I have for you guys is of the before. So this was like one of the very first days whenever all of the comfort bag boxes arrived, and this is what we were working with. And so now I want to show you guys some pictures during. So we had in between like 10 to 20 different groups that came and helped us fill all of our comfort bags. And so we had like faith-based groups. We had a lot of students from a university. We also had a lot of high school students. We had we had so many helpers. It was amazing. And so this is kind of at the very beginning what it looked like whenever we were filling the bags. This is just a picture of one of our groups that was able to come and help us. And then this last picture I wanted to show to you guys because this is kind of how we filled the comfort bag. So we had 2 assembly lines going. So originally we had decided, and this is what we had actually went through with doing, was filling all of the English bags first and then doing our Spanish bags because we had 14,400 comfort bags in total, and 2,000 of those were Spanish, the rest were English, but they were also split up by youth and teen bags. And so we had a system that we had worked out and it was going great. We filled all of the bags. And then since the end of April, we have been distributing some of these bags. And so I just wanted to show you guys some pictures of some of our recipients that we've had who have sent us pictures. We've also been taking pictures whenever we've been delivering them. And so you can see everyone's so happy to get their comfort bags. And it's been an amazing journey getting these bags out. And I've personally been able to hear so many stories from our natural helpers on how these bags are impacting the children that are receiving them. And so it's just absolutely wonderful to hear. And so now at this time, I know we only have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to push through some of our numbers that I wanted to present to you guys to tell you our reach and our impact within the program. So to date, as of the end of May, we have reached 692,374 people through the Circle of Care program. Our small but mighty team, we have reached so many people. It's been amazing. And so out of that 692,000, we were able to meet with people through one-on-one meetings. So myself and Terry, we had one-on-one meetings with stakeholders where we just told them about what the Circle of Care is, what Handle with Care is, how they can get involved with the project. So we did 150 of those. We did about 40 group presentations. So this would include like any staff meetings that agencies had and they wanted us to come in and talk about the project. This included any Ross Council meetings, any type of group setting where we were able to go in and present about the project. We were able to attend 21 conferences. We've been traveling all over the state, people, this whole year. I'm telling you, we've been up and down a bunch of times. But 21 conferences, we were able to present or do like a workshop or a session at about 15 of the 21 conferences. We were able to directly engage with about 50 caregivers. So these were individuals who had identified to us as, caring for a child who had been impacted by substance use disorder. We were able to directly engage with 350 youth and teens. A huge thank you to IABH as we were able to interact with a bunch of those kiddos directly through Operation Snowball, as well as the Seaburn Goodman Teen Institute. And then if you guys remember way back when at the beginning of the project, we held a bunch of lunch and learn and dine and discuss sessions where we really invited people all across the state to attend and learn more about the Circle of Care project. And I just think back to those sessions where I would always tell people, yeah, this is what we plan to do. And now we're at the point where we've done it, people. So we had about 163 people that attended those lunch and learn, dine and discuss sessions. And so Now I want to talk just a little bit about our impact. So I know Jessica had already stated some of these whenever she talked about the training, but I'm going to remind you guys one more time. So with the Threads of Hope training, we were able to train across the whole state of Illinois 437 people across 5 different regions, across several sectors, across several agencies. And so about 25% of our participants identified as natural helpers, which again, natural helpers are people that naturally interact with kiddos within their personal or professional role. And so that was really a big focus within our project, was really trying to reach and train those natural helpers. So we were really excited for that. In terms of our Handle with Care discussion sessions, we had about 6 or 7 of those, I want to say, and we were able in those sessions to have 125 attendees. So this was across law enforcement agencies, across schools, ROEs, education, as well as we had so many different community agencies that attended these discussion sessions as they talked about wanting to implement Handle with Care on an agency level, which is definitely something we promote and would love for agencies to do. And then as of yesterday, so far out of our 14,400 comfort bags, we've distributed 10,431 of those. So we are working on getting those last like 3,600 out before the end of June. And then kind of the last thing I wanted to touch on our impact, because a huge component of our project was the Threads of Hope training. We wanted to train people across the state on how to respond confidently and comfortably to child's grief related to substance use disorder, but we also really, really, really wanted to hone in, as Jessica said, on the intersectionality of grief and substance use disorder, on how stigma impacts these kiddos and these families. They internalize that into shame, which creates barriers to support. And so just from our training, Jessica was able to knock it out of the park and really was able to have that come through to our attendees. So 93 of our Threads of Hope training participants noted an increased understanding of stigma's impact. 94% noted a understanding of the grief frameworks, which is amazing. And then 97% reported being very satisfied with their experience in the training. So we're just so thankful that we were able to do this in our 1 year, you guys. We've just been so thankful for all of you, for everyone being so supportive of the project. And so I'm going to skip that one because we've only got a couple minutes left, and I want to tell you guys what is next. So some of you may have seen on our social media and through our email chain that I slipped in a little graphic and told you guys, hey, look what we're going to be doing before the end of June. So I will let Jessica talk about that in just a second. But also, I just want to remind everyone, even though our funding is coming to a close at the end of June, the Circle of Care is going to live on. So all of the wonderful resources that we've created in this 1 year, our online resource toolkits, our directory, the training videos, the Handle with Care discussion session videos, all of those things are going to live on our website. Nancy and Christina, they are going to keep everything up to date. They're going to keep the conversation going. They are going to, Circle of Care is going to live on. They're going to keep it going. And so, Nancy, I'll let you speak as well here in just a second, but I did want to introduce these 2 new resources. Sorry, I keep talking. But I did want to introduce these 2 new resources that we are going to have to you guys by the end of June that Jessica is creating for us. So these are going to be 2 new resources that you guys can add to your toolbox, your resource toolbox that we've created for you. And they will be live and available completely free, no cost for all of you to have access to. I'm going to turn it over to you, Jessica, if you would like to add anything.
Sure. Thank you, Ambrosia. So just, one of the things, so if we recognize and recall from the Lowe's specific, they were looking for more resources, right? What are these resources that are aligned with what the training helped us enhance? And so we heard you, and so we developed 2 new resources that we're hoping will accompany you and not only make the training more applicable, but even if you didn't have the training, you have tools. And one of those are the Intervention Activity Book for Natural Helpers and Professionals. So this particular book here is a collection of activities or interventions that you can use to partner with children to talk about substance use or substance use related death. So this is an opportunity to, it's structured to not only help you navigate those intersectionalities, but also provide actual ways that you can do this in your home. And so in there, they'll actually have the goal, what it supports, materials that you might need. And we were conscious of recognizing that sometimes resources are scarce, so some might not have to require any materials at all. Helpful discussion prompts and adaptations that might help. For instance, if you're a parent working with your child and wanting to do an activity at home, or if you're in a group setting and you run groups. So there are those considerations where we can be applicable. So that will be completed at the end of June. And then the second one is something just for the kiddos, and that is the coloring workbook. And so what that is really a collection of those protective factors and those opportunities that we told when children are grieving something that is an impact from substance use disorder and death, that it is the intersectionality of what we know that promotes the protective factors and health in that, right? Being able to tell your story, identifying your value system, understanding the 7 C's and how you can apply it. So those color pages are meant to be interactive. It'll prompt them, they can engage with them, but then it also can help them learn new mindfulness practices. So that item is specifically for kiddos, and it's designed to be in partnership with a safe adult or independent of. And so both of those will be available at the end of June.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jessica. I know that we are like right on time, 2 minutes. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us today and hearing all about the Circle of Care. Like I said, I just think back to whenever we first started this project and telling people about all of the things that we were going to do. And now looking, they're all completed. We've gotten great feedback from all of you across the state of Illinois on how these resources are or are going to really support your work with the children that you work with. I would love if you guys have any questions for me, our team, we would love to answer those for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen.